Hey guys, Eddie here. Been watching a lot of videos on Andrew Yang and Tulsi Gabbard. I really like these two candidates. From an ideological standpoint, I disagree with them completely. I don't think any of what they are suggesting as far as fixes go can work. But I still like them because they seem like genuine people, and I don't think we've ever had a genuine president. Obviously, not Trump, not Obama, not the Bushes. I mean, George Bush Jr., the son of a former president who was also formerly the head of the CIA. What are the? I mean, just doing the basic math on the chances of becoming president. Um, and also having a father that was previously a president. I mean, 300 odd million people in America, let's say 200 million of them or 100 million of them even are eligible to run for presidency. It would be 100 million to the power of two. I mean, that would be the chances theoretically, but, we all know this is not how the game is played. So I think, at least in my lifetime, every president that I've encountered, I just chalk them up to being slaves to the corporations. Um, so, they're worthless. But Tulsi and Yang definitely seem like genuine people. Now, one of the key points that Yang has mentioned that seems really attractive to everybody, and I like the idea of it in theory, but I don't think can work, is universal basic income, so UBI. So Andrew Yang has proposed that we have universal basic income of $1,000 a month for every American, no questions asked. And obviously, the first thing people ask him about that is, "Oh, how are we going to pay for it? How are we going to generate the money for this?" And what's funny is, and this is, I mean, there's a number of reasons that it can't work, but I'm gonna really delve deep into two um, areas on as to why it can't work. Uh, but when they ask him, hey, how's this going to work? And he just says, well, we're going to tax tech. We're going to add like a VAT tax to Amazon transactions. VAT is it's called like a value added tax. It's popular in Europe. The idea being, every transaction you take a little bit off the top, send it to the federal government. So, good in theory again, but here's why it can't work. Firstly, taxes don't pay for anything. Never have, never will. The if we go back 100 years upon the creation of the Federal Reserve, the concept was that a federal note, the dollars in your pocket, could be exchanged for gold. Now, that came to a quick end because I think in the 30s, whoever was the president then, basically didn't allow anybody to hold gold. It was illegal to hold gold. So if you can't exchange your fiat for, or your note, and you can't redeem it for gold, it's essentially fiat. So fast forward 30 years from that point, or 35 years from that point, Nixon completely killed the link to gold. There was no backing. I think the story is that the French were trying to cash in, a ton of dollars, U.S. fiat in return for gold, which is the way it's supposed to work. And Nixon said, nope, we're now fiat. We're money by decree, basically. So think about this. So let's say, I forget when the Bretton Woods Agreement was put into action, or when this fiat declaration, I think it was around my birthday when I was born. I think it was like August of 1971. But think about this. Let's say the Federal Reserve printed $1 billion, and this is all hypothetical. I've done some Googling looking for the actual numbers and just kind of sorted through some graphs. I kind of have some rough estimates, but I think it's just better to get the theory across just so there's an understanding. So let's say that the Federal Reserve printed, $1 billion at the behest of the U.S. government. So now we've got $1 billion in circulation, the Fed charges interest on that money. Let's say there's a 6% charge on that money. So there's only $1 billion of fiat, basically fake money, monopoly money, roaming around. Now, with fractional reserve banking, there's essentially like a 10x factor that can be applied to that, just through the nature of how fractional banking works. So, theoretically, there could be, up to 10 billion of fiat floating around just based on the nature of fractional reserve banking. But you still have the applied interest, all that subsequently fake money that's printed or, subsequently just created out of thin air. So now we've got, 10 billion in money floating around, but the Fed wants 6% on top of it. How in God's green earth are you ever going to recuperate that 10 billion ever without printing more money? So a year goes by, 10 billion has switched a lot of hands, mostly at the top, at the funnel, from the, right from the FOMC, the treasuries, so the bonds, and, people who have direct access to, the mortgages. And, I'm not sure if it was like that back in the 70s, but clearly, later on it was, the monetization and, creation of these financial instruments that are close to the, the funnel of the Fed's money supply, made it easy to not only run up debts in just the money supply, but then in tons of derivatives. So you've got 10 billion floating out there. So 10 billion's in circulation. It's in the hands of the American people, the government. It's, just floating around the world. And you're going to tax, the people because, people think, oh, taxation is how things are paid for. So I think there's tons of videos on this stuff. But, typically the nominal tax rate equates to about 20%, meaning it doesn't matter what the actual tax rate is. It could be super high, super low. Typical recuperation from the government is about 20%. All right, so let's say the government recoups, 2 billion of that 10 billion that's in circulation. And again, it's not straight linear math like that, but just stick with the example. So they now have a $2 billion budget, and they owe 600 million to the Fed. Let's make the numbers a little bigger. Let's make the interest 10% just so we don't have to fool with crazy math. So 10 billion in circulation, 2 billion recouped, $1 billion needs to be paid to the Fed for, the interest. All right, so we pay the interest on the Fed, so $1 billion goes to them. We got $1 billion left over. Okay, so naturally, when the government goes to do their budget, they are going to certainly, and as they always do, they spend more than is allotted for in the budget from taxation. They might say, okay, right, well, we paid the Federal Reserve their 10% interest. We've got $1 billion budget, but we certainly can't stay within that. Let's say this year we need a $2 billion budget. The Fed will print up another $1 billion for the government just out of thin air. So they get the right, this is not even a federal entity, but they get the right to print up another $1 billion, which again, will equate to another 10 billion in circulation with interest that has to be recouped at some future point. So whenever the bottom line is this, I mean, you can see where this goes. Whenever you have a system where there's an ever increasing money supply, and the interest obviously is not included in the circulation of the money, the only way to chase down that interest is by exponentially increasing the money supply. That's it. So at some point, either a few people end up owning everything because the wealth gets concentrated into the hands of the bankers. And they can print money out of thin air, and they have and they will. They've been doing it for since forever, but especially heavily since 2008, 2009 crisis with QE and programs like that, where they're basically just allowing people who have made poor choices, mortgage-backed securities and some of these CDOs and things of that nature, they are buying up these bad debts and they're keeping them on their books. So, the ability to tax yourself into prosperity is impossible, especially with the Federal Reserve. So what I would suggest to Yang is don't tax, just print. I mean, we have this messed up monetary system as it is, where they've been printing forever. The money supply has gone exponential. Just keep printing. And, you're right. Will it be a faster demise? I don't know. Might be, might not be. There might be some benefit from simply just printing the money. There might be, a bit of a landing zone so that people can transition into, gold and silver and more importantly, cryptocurrency. Why Yang is proposing taxes to pay for universal basic income is ridiculous. You've got the funnel of the Fed. So now, the second part of that with the UBI is, it can't work. Also because, things you give away are typically don't have value. You are typically searching for things that have value, and so you'll put your effort into things that are not given away. So if everybody's given $1,000 a month, and given that the money supply is ever increasing, you'll have to increase that every year. So to adjust for the cost of inflation. So one of the things that you could do to begin to remedy the problem and still use UBI, but again, even in an ideal monetary environment, UBI doesn't work. But even to attempt to make UBI work, what you could try to do is, how do I say this? So you basically have to have a closed loop money supply. So, right, akin to gold or silver or cryptocurrency, where you have a cap on the funds. So the best equation would be to cut the Fed out of the picture, nullify the Fed, just get rid of them. Say, hey, okay, here's the money supply. We are creating, keep it as, it doesn't matter what you call it, probably keep it as US dollars. We're going to, let's say, print $8 trillion and divvy that up equally among everybody in the United States. Again, this is hypothetical. I don't think this can work, but for Andrew Yang's UBI scenario to work, and be kind of robust and give the legs of an appearance of working, I think you'd have to go down this road. So, all right, 8 trillion in US dollars. But that's it. It's a hard cap. You're never going to increase the money supply. Or if you do, it's programmatic in a way. You say, hey, it's only going to go up 1% a year or 2% a year, or it's, based on the number of people. But you have to remember, money in the modern day sense is technically infinitely indivisible, especially with cryptocurrency now. Bitcoin, you can go out to 8 digits. Ethereum, you go out to 18 digits. So, you can take any unit of measure and split it up. There's, especially with software, there's no atomic unit. You can go pretty damn far out. So even if the Earth's population were to grow to 100 billion people, you could still use that base, that standard base, and then price is just a reflection of information. Information on cost of capital and services and everything that took to get that product to market. So you have a closed loop money supply. Again, let's arbitrary number here. I'm saying 8 trillion just because, if there's 400 million people in the US, that would mean that there's roughly 20,000 per person. And again, it's arbitrary. You can't think of that 20,000 as like, oh, that's a lot of money, or, oh, that's a little money. You have to look at it as, it's relative to the amount of money you have to other people. It's your share of a pool. And again, this shit can't work. But it's it would definitely be a better proposition than what Yang is proposing. So you have a closed money supply, 8 trillion. Everybody gets their 20,000, and of course, I haven't taken into account that we have to take in the relative wealth of current people. So there are people that are worth obviously a good deal more than that. So you'd have to have a balance when it comes to equating the amount of wealth that you start off with initially. Because if you've been in the game for 65, 70 years and you accumulated 50 million in your life, you were frugal, you were smart with your time and your investments. You're not going to suddenly say, hey, I'm taking 20,000. That's ridiculous. So, but just stay with me here. So let's say the average person would get 20,000 US dollars. It's a closed loop money supply. It's never going to grow. It's just basically always going to recirculate. So now in a closed loop money supply, that's where you can tax, and that's where you actually have to tax. That's the only way to keep the funds flowing. So imagine this. You have 20,000 in a bank account. Everybody in America has 20,000 on average in a bank account. At the beginning of every day, let's say, so Andrew Yang's proposal is 1,000 a month. So let's say at the beginning of every month, the first of every month, you run an application that says, hey, this person has less than $1,000 in their bank account. Let's top it off at 1,000. And then you tax proportionately the people that are left with the greater pool of money, and then you fill in the bank accounts. I've run a ton of models on this. Worst case scenario model I could see is maybe like a 4% tax per month per person. But again, it can't work. And here's why. People are always going to seek value. So I got involved in crypto in 2012. Got involved with Bitcoin, started off with Bitcoin. Quickly moved on to Litecoin and Nextcoin and Darknet, which became Dash. And, now there's other coins I love like Pivx and Ethereum and, Numeraire. So, why would I hang on to a system where I know I'm going to get $1,000 every month and I don't have to work, I don't have to do anything for it? I mean, and they're going to tax me if I have more than 1,000. So I'm going to take that 1,000 and immediately move it into something that I believe has more value. And eventually people wake up, if you're the most astute person in the world, like a Jeff Bezos or a Bill Gates, who's, building empires and are based on this US dollar, and you're just trying to get the most chips. But every month when it comes time for your UBI to get, taken out of your account, which will happen automatically, you're not going to want to work so hard. And that's fine. I'm not saying that, you have to work hard. There's levels of work, but, I think you'd see a larger pool of people jump into I'm not going to work at all, or I'm going to work the bare minimum that I absolutely have to just to get by. When you include this UBI, and then that will break other structures. So if I took my 1,000 a month of UBI and I tossed it into, Bitcoin, Litecoin, Pivx, eventually that even the most horrible coin, even these scam coins, they have their run-ups. They might go 10x or 100x. And then I might say, okay, well, I've been investing 1,000 a month of my US dollars, my UBI, and I've got, 10,000 worth of red coin, and then it goes 100x, and now I've got $1 million worth of red coin. Well, then I might take some off the table and convert it into US dollars to, do easy transactions, assuming that, in 5 years we don't have a very quick and easy way to, transact at the counter for, most for cryptocurrencies. It's just not ubiquitous yet, but it will be. but there will always be a flight to value, and that value entails hard work. It's thought and risk, and when you take those things out of the equation, you're basically saying, hey, your thing is worthless. So what Yang is saying to me with the UBI is, hey man, U.S. dollar is worthless. Now, I know that. Many other people know that. But that's like a clear sign that the U.S. dollar is coming to an end. But I still like Yang. I still like Tulsi, and it's based on their character. Tulsi's anti-war. She's a veteran. I think she might even be overseas right now, or she went back for. Did she go back? I gotta check the news, but she wants to end all these occupations and wars that we're running right now. I think there's from what I've read and seen on YouTube, the U.S. is in 7 wars right now, and this is I'm not an expert on the subject of geopolitical strategy as far as protecting the nation. So I really can't speak to this, but it seems like we've spread a good amount of ill will around the country or around the world, and we've created a ton of enemies. When really we should just be trying to, create free trade and open markets and try to make as many people as possible our allies. Try to understand, the countries that, are not receptive to some of the more Western philosophies, accept them for, why their systems are the way that they are, and, work towards peaceful change. But, these never-ending wars, I don't know. And, that's what I like about Tulsi. She kind of has a beat on that and wants to end these regime change wars that, the CIA is typically involved in. So, yeah, good luck, Andrew Yang and Tulsi, and it'd be nice to see some good quality people in the office for once.